Hello everyone! Today I'll be reviewing bookshelf speakers from one of the youngest brands in the business, Q Acoustics Model 3030i, the one with proper 6.5-inch driver. Without further ado, let's briefly overview the build quality and design first. So certainly those British loudspeakers look undisputably unique. That is mostly thanks to their rounded edges, which are not only an advantage from the design point of view, but supposedly in sonic performance as well. I like this, and one thing I can tell you, after spending some time with them, my main speakers just didn't look the same as before. On the front, around the drivers, they put those metallic rings, which I'm also into. Wherever it's plastic or real metal, I don't care, because they are totally convincing and of superb quality. Even on the back, they put effort to maintain minimalism, quality and attention to detail, which is not always the case, especially at this price point. Also, the terminals look very different than usual and totally fit the whole design. All of the regular trademarks and labels were put around the baseboard, which is also a very smart utilization of free space. The only thing I don't like is the outside surface. Important note, there are some other color choices and wood vinyl, though in my case it was the very same material / paint I criticized in the B&W 606. It looks a bit cheap and boring and just doesn't suit the rest of the elegance in here. But anyway, both the design and build quality are easily one of the best in the class in my opinion. In 3 words, the Q Acoustics 3030i look coherent, simple and elegant. So, all the less important things aside, how is the sound quality? Well, the sound signature is direct and condensed. Tonally they are rather a bit warmish, though in the same time there is some forward energy due to slightly elevated higher frequency response and punchy bass. At first, before further listening and doing some measurements, I honestly thought those speakers were emphasizing mid-range a bit. Why? Because the vocals sounded slightly louder than what I'm used to. And I really enjoyed this, since the way how speakers are managed to reproduce voices is one of the most important aspects to me. That said, what I learned here is that perceived advantage in vocals may not always mean the most flat frequency response. If you look at the measurements in my room I've done later, there seemed to be a dip around the 1.5 to 2.5 kHz frequency range, which actually stands for some lag in the upper mid-range. Please keep in mind that those are just measurements in my room, so we have to at least compare them to some other speakers. Now what you see is the comparison with my reference Quarrel Platinum Plus 2, marked as a blue line on the graph. Notice their frequency response is more flat and the dip is not present there. Just keep in mind that those speakers belong to a different class, so I won't bash the Q Acoustics here. I am just trying to point out their key characteristics as best as I can. So what I think is actually happening in the Q Acoustics is that the sense of density and body I've heard, especially in low-pitch male vocals, comes from the combination of solid lower mids foundation, that obvious dip and slightly sparky highs. Without a subtle boost in high frequencies, those speakers would probably sound a bit too muddy. The clove dome tweeter in here may not do the best I've heard in terms of resolution, but the speakers are sort of balanced in a way that I hear good amount of detail in the music, and the performance seem to be on par with the price. Indeed, they are sparky, but harshness is not really a problem here, in opposite to, let's say, B&W 606, well known for that. But how about lows? Well, right from the first audition, bass was not my cup of tea, to be honest. Sure, it probably has more weight than the smaller 3020i's and it's punchy, but it just sounds too artificial. boosted in some ways I don't like and shallow in others. I don't hear many different textures, and the lower frequencies in here sound kind of uneven, like all the bass was trapped somewhere. I have to say, usually 6.5-inch drivers perform with a bit more finesse, even at this price point. And frankly, maybe I could live with some limitations in bass response, but my main gripe, probably in part connected with this, is soundstage. Surprisingly, despite very respectable horizontal dispersion, the 3030Is sound just a bit too small. They cannot really create convincing, powerful image around themselves, and whereas the imaging and separation are decent too, the speakers are simply unable to provide with sense of reality in the scene. Perhaps if they would experiment with the cabinet proportions, result would be different, but we don't know that. In summary, the Q Acoustics 3030Is are an interesting pair of speakers with unique characteristics both in sound and design. I really like their unusual shape, attention to detail, and very good build quality. In terms of sound, I enjoyed the directness in the vocals and the sense of forwardness. Having said that, I can't really recommend them as all-around performers. In my opinion, their main flaw lays in the lack of fidelity and ability to create more sophisticated three-dimensional-like image. Also, the bass lacked some warmth, being a bit too hard and shallow. So in the end, Q Acoustics 3030i gets 4 out of 5 stars, which I think is reasonable, accounting we speak about $400 price range. Whereas the speakers are not really for me, nor I would recommend it to most people, I can totally imagine someone looking for that distinctive, direct and condensed sound. Let me know what do you think about the 3030Is in the comments down below. If you like my content, support this little hobbyist by subscribing. See you in the next one. Peace.